Welcome back, my friends. Today on the channel, we're going to do another question and answer video. Once a month on the community tab, my YouTube channel, I'll put out a question prompt such as this one. Down below, you can ask me anything about anything, read each other's questions, and thumbs up the ones you want me to respond to. The cutoff for today's video was 60 thumbs up. Thank you so much to everyone who left a question or read each other's questions. So the top-ranked question was from Famios. Will you come to Ukraine one day? I'm a volunteer here. I hope you can come. Maybe you can also find a nice project or fund your own project. For the long-term Ukraine, after the war is over, Ukraine needs investments from the West to rebuild. So it'd be great if you have a look here and also show your audience what Ukrainians are working on and how the rebuilding is going. Would be happy to guide you around Kyiv. Well, thank you so much for volunteering your time and putting yourself on the ground in Ukraine. The answer is yes, I do really want to visit. And the reason why I haven't is Ukraine is very far away. The drive to get from Warsaw to Kyiv is about 10 hours. And to fly from the west coast of America to Poland, that's a 16-hour flight. 16 plus 10 plus needing to sleep or stay somewhere. It's a 2-day journey for me to get from Las Vegas to Kyiv. It would then be 2 days back. So if I spent 2 or 3 days in Kyiv, I'm looking at a solid week of traveling around. That's the reason why I haven't done it yet, but if I'm being honest, I know I should. I should really put in a week, dedicate it, go to Ukraine, and see the country for myself. So what I'm planning, we just wrapped up our birthday fundraiser, $1.2 million. The NAFO 69th Sniffing Brigade is close to completing the 30 vehicles we fundraised for. Once all the trucks and drones from our first fundraiser have reached Ukraine, we're going to launch our next fundraiser. We're going to be ambitious again. We're going to try and fundraise $1 million once more. And if we hit $1 million, this is the hook, I will go to Ukraine in either September or October to be part of one of these convoys. This is something I would like to do. This is what I'm communicating with Alex. He's my contact at the 69th Sniffing Brigade. So stay tuned. We're going to launch this fundraiser, I think, later this month. And if it goes well, I will make an appearance in Ukraine. I will see the people. I will share their stories. That's what I want for this channel in the future. Additionally, after the war, I absolutely, once it's perfectly safe and we have more spare time, I will make the trip to Ukraine again and give updates on how the country is rebuilding. Next question is from Jumper Pence. Do you think a potential Harris administration would benefit Ukraine in terms of military assistance? Keep up the good work, Jake, from the UK. Well, there's no downside. I think if Vice President Kamala Harris is elected in November, the worst we'll do is more of the same. The same level of support and funding that President Biden has been providing for the last 2.5 years. But there is a serious chance it could increase. Joe Biden, in my opinion, has been playing it safe for a very long time, and we're getting a younger generation. Joe Biden is the last of the baby boomer presidents. Vice President Kamala Harris is 20 years younger. She's from the Gen X. They have a different perspective on the world, and different people will be brought into her administration. And after 2.5 years of this nonsense, I have to believe they're going to want to find a way to expedite an end to this war. How can we make it stop sooner? And I argue giving Ukraine overwhelming force, lifting all restrictions, that is the fastest way to end this war and help Russia realize they're never going to win. Now, concerning the vice presidents and vice presidents in America have a special relationship, and they bring into people into the administration to kind of represent both. Presidential party tickets in America for the last 200 years has always been about balancing each other out, either demographically or geographically, and even ideologically. So I can't explain to you how Tim Walz is different than Kamala Harris because, if I'm being honest, we don't speak a lot about policy these days. But I know Tim Walz is a veteran. He served in the National Guard for 24 years. The people he's been exposed to his entire life and has built working relationships with are very different from Kamala Harris, who was a prosecutor in California before becoming a senator. So I'm confident that Tim Walz is going to bring in my opinion, more interesting and, I hope, more aggressive people to handle these international crises around the world. I do want to say that Tim Walz is a strong supporter of Ukraine. This tweet is from April of 2022, and he states, "I'm proud to sign a bill today to end state investments and contracts in Russia and Belarus. Minnesota does not tolerate the continued illegal aggression against Ukraine." Next question is from Rusty Heyman. Why is Russia not designated a terrorist state? Yeah, that's a good question. So officially, well, first of all, the EU, the G7, individual countries can do whatever they want. But the United States specifically has only designated 4 countries as state sponsors of terrorism: Cuba, North Korea, Iran, and Syria. And when you do this, this is the nuclear option in diplomacy. State-sponsored designations are highly consequential, both legally and politically, and for this reason, Washington typically avoids listing states with which it has multifaceted relations. Indeed, what Cuba and the other 3 countries listed states have in common is that the U.S. has no formal diplomatic or commercial ties with any of them. So we don't have any diplomatic or economic relations at all with these 4 countries. That's not true with Russia. There are lots of Western and American companies still doing business in Russia. Unilever or PepsiCo or Burger King or whoever. And if the United States designated Russia a state sponsor of terrorism, they're done. They can't do business with Russia anymore. I argue that's a good thing, but these companies and their shareholders disagree. If these companies lost assets and lost values, those companies and their employees, their executives would be unhappy, and this might actually weaken support for Ukraine here in the United States. So there's been this balancing act to pressure and suggest strongly to corporations to leave Russia, but they haven't been forced. Obviously, there's been restrictions on anything that could be used for military purposes in Russia, like semiconductors, but ordinary companies selling soft drinks, Red Bull or bars of soap, they haven't been forced to leave, but they would have to leave if Russia was designated a state sponsor of terrorism. Additionally, the United States won't do this because Russia has 6,000 nuclear weapons. We need diplomats inside of Russia. We need an embassy inside of Russia to continue bilateral talks about international conflicts. I hate to use this expression, but Russia is just too big and important to do this to? I mean, that's not my opinion. That's the opinion of the Biden administration and the White House. So I want to make that clear. I don't think the United States will ever do this just because Russia has so many nuclear weapons, and we always have to keep this clear line of dialogue between our 2 nations. Russia knows this. If asked, will you be willing to serve as National Security Advisor in a future Harris administration? Hell no. That sounds like a terrible job. I guarantee you that Jake Sullivan hates his life right now. There's so many conflicts in the world between China preparing their invasion of Taiwan, Iran wanting to invade everybody, Saudi Arabia and Israel, Venezuela on the verge of collapse as Maduro tries to hold on to power, Cuba is allowing Russian ships to dock in their harbors, and of course Putin's not done doing whatever he wants to do. So this sounds like a miserable job, and I don't think it's going to get any better the next 4 years. I'm happy being a commentator here on YouTube, providing information and perspective, but to have that actual responsibility when people start dying because a dictator wants to steal his neighbor's stuff and trying to manage that, no, I don't think that's a job that I would particularly enjoy. I know people don't like Jake Sullivan, but I guarantee you he's going away. He's just trying to get through the next 6 months without a nuclear weapon going off, and then he's going to write a book and go teach at a university and lead a quiet life. I don't know who's going to replace him, but they have a very difficult job. Do you think Europe will be able to give enough military aid to hold back the Russians in case Trump completely cuts military aid? I've been asked this question before, and the answer is yes. The United States' economy is worth 29 trillion US dollars, but the rest of Europe and the G7 are nothing to, they're no slouches. Germany, Japan, the United Kingdom, France, Italy, Canada, all have economies larger than Russia. So if the political will is there from the G7 and NATO countries, they should be able to militarily provide enough support for Ukraine to hold off the Russians forever. It just so happens that the United States has been hoarding weapons the last 70 years, and we have the most spare weapons in our inventory to donate. This is about balancing out the contributions. Europe has done more for financial assistance and humanitarian relief, taking in millions of refugees, and the United States balances it out by providing more military support. So I do believe that even if Donald Trump is elected and cuts off all military aid, Europe should still be able to support Ukraine indefinitely if the political will is there. This is what Putin and the Russians are counting on for standard of living to go down, inflation to go up, and then when we have a democratic election, people abandon Ukraine. They vote for far-right politicians sympathetic to Russia who argue we should just let Russia win. So if America falls, it's up to you, Europe, if you want to step up and have the political will to keep supporting Ukraine without the United States. Should Kamala Harris visit Ukraine to show her support? And the honest answer is no. Kamala Harris is running for president of the United States, not president of the world or president of Europe. And there's not a lot of time left. And I know for Europeans, our political process seems insane because it is so long. But you also have to remember the United States is huge. The United States, especially if you factor in Alaska, geographically is bigger than the European Union. 330 million Americans, taking up the best real estate on the North American continent. So Tim Walz and Kamala Harris are going to be visiting a lot of states, a lot of cities, meeting with as many Americans as possible to earn their votes before November. And I can show you this map. This is, I think, a map that people don't think or talk about. But these are Senate races that are also happening in each of the states. And Tim Walz and Kamala Harris are going to be crisscrossing the country for the next 80-some days. And they need to help these senators maintain their seats. Even if Kamala Harris wins the White House, but if the Democrats lose the Senate, that's not good. So they're going to be spending time in Nevada and Arizona and Wisconsin and Michigan and Ohio and Virginia and Pennsylvania and maybe even West Virginia to help these incumbent Democrats keep their seats in the Senate. And who knows, they might go on the offensive, potentially in Texas or even Florida, if those Senate races are competitive. Kamala Harris does support President Zelensky and does support Ukraine. They've met numerous times, and I think Kamala Harris, once elected, probably will visit Europe in the first 6 months or a year. And if she can safely and securely visit Kyiv, like President Biden did, she'll do it. I'm confident. Next question is from Medallion. Jake, do you ever think of getting into politics in the future? Getting elected as a representative or a senator? Jake, you are doing great in all your videos. Your analysis of the war, the politics, and all other issues is plausible. Plausible. I like your vote of confidence there. And the answer is yes, but the problem we have in America with people running for Congress is the people in Congress are not the best and brightest. They're just the lucky ones who happen to be in the right place at the right time. So geographically, you're restricted. If two people who are incredible and should be serving in Congress happen to live in the same neighborhood, they both can't work in Congress. So for me, I've actually looked into this, and the two districts here in Vegas that I could potentially run in are represented by Democrats. These would be incumbent Democrats, and I would have to primary one of them, beat them in the primary, and then win a general election. That's kind of hard to do. Same is true for the city of Milwaukee, my hometown. It's represented by Democrats, and I would have to primary an incumbent, defeat them, and then win a general election. That's not happening. I'm also not running as a Republican because, in my opinion, the Republican Party doesn't exist anymore. It's a MAGA cult, and I want nothing to do with it. Their platform is pure lies, and I could never win a primary just lying about everything. So I have to run as a Democrat. So let's talk about the Senate. And in 2026, there is no Senate race for either Nevada, the state I'm living in, or Wisconsin, the state I'm from. So I can't run for the House or the Senate in 2026. But in 2028, once again, a slight problem. A Democrat is running as the incumbent for Nevada, so I would have to primary him or her, then win the general election. But a Republican is seeking re-election, I think this is Ron Johnson, in Wisconsin. This honestly is my only hope of getting into Congress in the next 4 years. So I am thinking about it, running for Senate in Wisconsin in 2028 as a Democrat. I would have to win a competitive primary and then win a general election against a sitting incumbent. It's possible, but it's going to require a lot of time and a lot of money. I love Wisconsin. It's my home state. Born and raised in Milwaukee. Went to university in Eau Claire. I haven't lived there in a while because I was in the military and I taught English in South Korea. Would I be happy to move back to run for the Senate? Absolutely. So stay tuned over the next 4 years. If you like this idea and you want me to run for government, run for Senate, consider supporting me. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. If you want to sign up for my Patreon or my channel membership, financially, I'm doing fine now, but running for Congress is a full-time job. I won't be able to make as many YouTube videos. I'll still post on social media, but they won't be these longer format videos that I'm doing now. If I have to take the time to run for Senate, I'd like for my mortgage, my house, to be paid off and to feel financially secure enough to do so. So if you're supporting me now, thank you so much. If you want to consider supporting me, that would just make it easier, once again, for me to run for Congress someday. How can we defeat Trump and MAGA once and for all? Donald Trump is the three-time Republican nominee, the nominee in 2016, 2020, and 2024. His political career should have ended at so many points. I could recite them all, but for people who love and support Trump, they don't care anymore. In the Air Force, I had a top secret security clearance, and I was a nuclear and missile operations officer. When Donald Trump left office, he stole highly classified documents, including secrets about our nuclear forces. And then he kept them in a bathroom basement in Mar-a-Lago, unsecured, for months before the FBI was able to get them back. The National Archives Service contacted him and said, "We're missing all these documents. Did you take them?" He lied. He moved them around to hide them, to keep them, told people to delete security camera footage. Like, Donald Trump is a criminal on so many counts. But it doesn't matter. We could talk about January 6th. MAGA is violent. If you're watching this and you ever identified as a Republican in the past, the Republican Party doesn't exist anymore. The party of Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr., George Bush Jr., Dick Cheney, Mitt Romney, John McCain. In my opinion, when John McCain died in 2018, the Republican Party died as well. I don't understand what this is, but it has all the characteristics of a cult. Doesn't matter what Donald Trump says and does. People are still going to support him, still going to vote for him. So this only ends when Donald Trump dies, in my opinion. I don't want him assassinated. That would be terrible. He should not be made a martyr. But the guy is 78 years old and obese. He's just not going to be able to do this much longer. If he's the Republican nominee in 4 years again at the age of 82, so eventually Donald Trump won't be alive, and I don't think the political bullets that he's dodged so frequently, unexplainably the last 9 years, I don't think anyone can repeat this. Now, Donald Trump did lose the popular vote in 2016 by 3 million votes. He then lost the popular vote again in 2020 by 7 million votes. And I think he's going to lose the popular vote to Kamala Harris this November by about 10 million votes. So we can defeat MAGA if they just lose horribly. We need them to lose in every single battleground state. This election should not be close. The last election wasn't close, but Donald Trump managed to convince his stupid supporters that it was rigged or something. Like, there's no evidence, nothing presented in court, nothing investigated by Congress. Hopefully MAGA ends this November. We can get the Republican Party back. We can get honest people with integrity representing conservative values in a coherent national party. We don't have that right now. The reason why Indiana is polling close is because Mike Pence, the former vice president, used to be the governor of Indiana, and Donald Trump tried to have him killed on January 6th for not overturning the election. This is how stupid American politics is right now. This election shouldn't even be close. But we're getting there. I'm 100% confident Harris is going to win in November. Hey Jake, do you think we will see American and European volunteers in the cockpits of Ukrainian F-16s? It's possible. If you are a former F-16 pilot and you'd like to join the Ukrainian Air Force, contact the Foreign Legion. I'm sure they'll want to at least interview you. What I think is more helpful is trainers and maintainers. If you've ever worked on F-16s in the past and you want to join the Foreign Legion to be a maintainer, I think they would really like to have you. The problem with the pilots is these are the guys risking their lives. Every time they fly a combat mission, they might not be coming home to their wives and kids. They're doing it for their people, for their nation. And I just don't think if you recruited a pilot from Chile or Portugal or Belgium, that they would have the same skin in the game. I'm not saying they're not deserving or honorable people if they're willing to volunteer. But this is war. This is a genocide. This is a war for survival. So I actually think Ukraine should restrict the pilots they use in combat roles to just Ukrainians because it's their war. And these are the people that I trust to risk their lives with every single mission, to do the right thing. It is a global effort. The West is collective and united in support of Ukraine, but once again, it's not our people dying, it's their people. Could you look at the Democratic VP candidates' stances on Ukraine? So this question was asked before Tim Walz was announced as Kamala's VP, but I can show you more tweets of Governor Walz before he was even being considered for VP, showing his strong support for Ukraine. So here is Governor Walz on a Zoom call with President Zelensky, and he tweeted this out in April of 2023. This morning I joined other governors to meet with President Zelensky and reaffirm our ongoing commitment to Ukraine. I can share another tweet. Minnesota will continue to support Ukraine as they defend freedom and democracy. I visited the Ukrainian embassy to establish a formal partnership between the public, private, and academic sectors of Minnesota and the Chernihiv Oblast. Here's Governor Walz wearing a Ukraine flag pin, meeting with the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States. Tim Walz was a good pick. I'm really liking this guy. Next question is from David. Should Europe and Ukraine prepare, just in case, for a future without support from the United States? Can Ukraine, with support from the rest of the world, plan a future course for the conduct of the Ukraine war without support from America? This is similar to an earlier question, but I'll add some additional information. And Donald Trump loves dictators. If a dictator says nice things about Donald Trump will say nice things about dictators, which means he's easy to manipulate. All you have to do is flatter Donald Trump and offer him something, and he will say you're one of the greatest leaders in the world. Donald Trump in the last 2.5 years has not tweeted or said one critical thing of Vladimir Putin or any Russian war crime. Additionally, Trump in 2016 liked to talk tough about China, but the second he met President Xi and they shared a beautiful piece of chocolate cake, now Trump loves China, and he loves Xi, and he praises and promotes this guy at every opportunity. The stupidest one, the worst one, is Trump's obsession with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. I don't understand this. Like, Putin and Xi are at least wealthy, in charge of wealthy countries, but like North Korea is like the poorest, most backwater place in the world. But once again, Trump has never met a dictator that he didn't like. And in 2018, as he was president at the time, he said he was in love with Kim Jong-un. And I'm just going to play this clip.
Being tough, and so was he. And we would go back and forth, and then we fell in love. Okay? No, really. He wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters. We fell in love. But you know...
So that is the President of the United States in 2018 saying that he and the dictator of North Korea wrote each other beautiful letters and fell in love. Tens of millions of Americans are going to vote for this weirdo. And Trump's doing it again. Trump praises Venezuela's dictator, says he made the country very safe. This is from this week. So, yeah, I mean, I'll play the clip. Why not?
Right. What do you think about what's going on in Venezuela, the whole situation out there?
Well, I know it very well, and Venezuela is right now being run by a dictator. We were enemies with Venezuela. Venezuela was going to collapse, and people could have gone back to Venezuela. They're in our country now. They've released tremendous numbers of criminals into our country. If you look at Caracas, it was known for being a very dangerous city, and now it's very safe. In fact, the next interview we'll do it in Caracas, Venezuela, because it's safer than many of our cities.
Trump just can't help himself. He acknowledges that Maduro is the dictator of Venezuela, but then he goes on to praise him, saying that Maduro made Caracas, Venezuela, one of the safest cities in the world. Safer than most American cities. And as a good idea, the next interview these two do together should be in Caracas, Venezuela, because it's so safe. Which is not true. It's insane to say that. Homicides in Venezuela have skyrocketed since they stopped being a democracy, and then Hugo Chavez and then Maduro took power. Here is a comparison against other South American and Latin American countries. Only El Salvador and Honduras have a higher homicide rate than Venezuela, with the global average, including the United States, being way down here. So concerning your question and Europe, what should you do? Trump is not going to leave NATO. Putin would rather keep the United States in NATO so that Trump can block things and just cause difficulties. The goal is chaos, confusion, and dysfunction. That's the purpose that Trump serves. This is why the Russians and Putin are promoting him. Once again, it's about political will. I don't think Donald Trump is going to win, but even if he does, if the Europeans stand united, if they're willing to accept a little hardship to hold off the Russian invasion of Europe, I mean, the Baltics and maybe potentially Finland and Poland are next, they can do it. I wish we could make it easier for you, but Europe can still do it. I pulled this up, once again, looking at the polling and the probability of who will win. Kamala Harris is building her lead every single day, and Donald Trump continues to fall. Donald Trump is not going to win in November. All right, that's all for this Q&A. If you made it this far, thank you so much. You're a true fan, a super fan. I really appreciate you. Till the next month, till the next Q&A, take care, everyone. Be safe. I appreciate you.